Thank you for joining us at One Church. If you'd like to know more about us, you can simply visit our website, onechurchjoplin.org. We would like to stay connected with you throughout the week wherever you go, and the simplest way for you to do that is to like our Facebook page, where we post all of our content. And you can always come visit us Sunday morning at 9:30 a.m. or 11 a.m. I believe that you're here for a reason, and God has something He wants to say specifically to you. And my hope for you is that by the end of this video, you feel closer to God than you ever have before.
Good morning. Good to have you here today. We are kicking off a new series, and we're excited to have you join us today. As you can see, it's called Address the Mess. And I like this series. It's one that I relate to. And I think widely across the board, by the time we get to the end of today, a lot of us are going to relate to this series. We're going to be looking at today this thought of the mess in the mirror. The mess in the mirror. But a lot of us, if we can look at our lives and we can see our mess, if we can recognize our mess, we have the opportunity to see God. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. But I think if we jump in, a lot of us, we can relate to the idea of a mess. A mess. I think there's some women in the crowd here today that go, yes, I have a family. I can relate to this thought of a mess. You know, last night I went to dinner with my family, and we went to eat Thai food. And I love Thai food. And it's one of the few things that for whatever reason, my whole family likes Thai food. My daughter's actually her idea. And you've got all of them. And I don't know what it is, but it becomes like projectile, like the rice. And I've got Gabby, she's got like a noodle hanging over her arm, and she's slurping it over her arm. And you just look, and I just feel so bad when I get up from the table, and I'm walking away, and I look at the server, and I'm just like, I'm sorry. I left a tip. Like, I'm sorry, this is my kids. Welcome to a day in our life. You know what I'm saying? Have you ever felt bad walking away from a table? Yes. Yes. So, here we are jumping into this thought of a mess. A lot of us have heard this term, this phrase, and indulge me if you will, if you've ever heard this. How many of you have heard the phrase, hot mess? Yes? You've heard the phrase, a hot mess. I see people going, yes, I understand that. So do a little digging, and did you know that the phrase hot mess, it came to fruition, it came to be in the 1800s. A hot mess was a reference for food. It was a reference for food. If you were in the military, you know, you got I guess that's what the food looked like. It was a hot mess. I can't even tell you what it would look like, but a hot mess in terms of a mess hall or whatever you got to eat, it was a hot mess. And then in the 20th century, that term changed a little bit, and it still dealt with the military, but it was used to describe a dangerous or unpleasant situation in a military context, saying, do not raise your weapons or this entire situation can turn into a hot mess. So it's a little bit different than it was in the previous century. And now, today, that's completely different again with the evolvement of this term hot. You know, hot isn't what it used to be. Like in the 18th century, if I were to look at a girl and go, oh man, she's hot, somebody would go, well then open a window. You know, like open a window. And like today, guys would be like, yeah, I see what's going on. Yeah, you know, that. So now, with this evolution of the term hot, a hot mess now refers to something we can call an attractive disaster. An attractive disaster. Someone whose life is in obvious disarray. Someone whose life is in obvious disarray, but who somehow remains functional and attractive in spite of it. And so I think that term a lot of us can relate to, this hot mess. And you know, you can stand out as a greeter on a Sunday morning. People pull through and they drop their kids off, and you can see a lot of hot messes pulling into the parking lot. Like you can see people, they're like getting composure of their children, like as they pull in, they're like looking at the back seat and they're like, I didn't say take your seatbelt off. You better, when you get out of that car, you better not be arguing. You act like we're a family. Let's be a team when we get out. Does everybody have their shoes? Where are your shoes? For crying out, why are your shoes off? Anybody else have that child? Yeah. And then I look at Julie and I'm like, why are your shoes off? No, I'm kidding. But we look at this and then, you know, you'll open a door for somebody and then you know how it is. Like the music's cranking in there, kids are yelling, papers and, you know, sippy cups are falling out, trying to shut the door and like you're just hoping it all stays in. Am I hitting where anyone's living? I've been there. I've got 3 daughters. You know my life. I display it up here on all the time. But anyways, someone that's a hot mess often looks better than they really are. They're attempting to look better than they really are. And I think a lot of us can relate to that. You just want to look like, man, I just want people to think I have it together for a day, that I'm just not failing at life. I just want people to think I get it, okay? And so this is our goal, is to be, if we realize we're a mess, but maybe we can be a hot mess in the process. But a lot of us are sitting in the room today and we're going, wait a second, Shane, what mess are you talking about? Maybe you're looking at your life and you're just not relating. You don't feel that your life is a mess. Well, let me change that for you, okay? So, you'll feel good about yourself here in just a moment. Maybe you're dealing with a relational mess. That can mean a lot of things. Maybe it's your living situation. Maybe you're living with someone and it has become a mess. Maybe you're dating someone and you look at that and you're like, I don't know how this worked out, but you're in a dating situation and you don't know the why or the what, but here you are now, and it's become this hot mess, and it's progressed to a live-in situation, and then it's gone beyond a live-in situation, and now you're married to him, and despite what his 3 exes tried to tell you about him, you thought you could fix him, ladies, and you realize now that you can fix a dog, but you cannot fix a man. That's just the truth of the matter. You can't fix it. Or maybe you have a family mess. Maybe your kids are your mess. Sometimes I can relate to that one. Sometimes I'll look at my kids and I just go, oh my Lord, I wonder what people think of us. You look at your kids and you're like, if this is what people see, if this represents our family, we have missed the mark. Sometimes you feel that way. Or maybe your mess in your family, don't raise your hand if this is you, but maybe it's your in-laws. And if they're sitting near you, do not raise your hands. But maybe it's your in-laws. Maybe that's the mess you deal with. And I see people that are going, I'm sitting next to my in-laws and I'm trying to hold it together. Maybe your life, the mess that you deal with, it's a financial mess. Maybe it's something that you're dealing with. You're in credit card debt up to your eyes, and you're dealing with something, and you've robbed Peter to pay Paul, and there's no light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe you're in a physical mess. I can relate to the physical mess. Trying to do something about that. You become so busy in life that you have no time to physically take care of yourself. And so what happens? Your body becomes a physical mess. Don't all agree at once. Yes, I get it. Or maybe your habits are a mess. Maybe the way you respond to things, the things that you do habitually, the things that you watch, the things you partake in, the things that you do, your habits, maybe that is what is a mess in your life. Maybe your parenting is a mess. You look at your life and your parenting. You don't know what happened. You thought you did everything right, and you've missed the mark somewhere. Maybe you were parented by messes. Maybe that's what it is. But a lot of us can deal and relate to this. And so for maybe, if you don't think that you're in a mess right now, maybe you're one of these folks, that you feel that you're between messes right now. Maybe you just got out of a mess, you're breathing for a little bit, but you know as well as I do that the next mess in your life is right around the corner. It's just coming, it's going to pop up, and it's going to broadside you. You just know that. And you never know where the next one will materialize when there's still one in your rearview mirror. So that's what we deal with. Some of you have gotten drug in to someone else's mess. Anyone else? Can anyone relate to that one? You ever been called by somebody and they tell you a situation or some circumstances and they want you to choose sides? I've had that one. It's my family calling me. Something happens at a birthday party or a holiday event that you weren't even at, and they call up and they want to tell you what went down, and then you're forced in that moment to take a side, and all of a sudden you are in a mess that wasn't a fault of yours, but now it's your mess. You get drug into it and you look back and you're like, wait, how did that happen? How did that even happen? But it becomes your mess now. Well, the truth is this: we've been weeks away from either getting through a mess or going into a new mess, and we come by them honestly. It's something that happens to us naturally. But there is good news. The good news is this: I want everybody in the room to look to the left, all the way down your row, Everyone look to the right, all the way down your row, because here is the truth. You are surrounded by people who are just like you. A hot mess. Their life is a mess. You sit in a row of messes. The man on the stage is a mess. It's just the truth. That's what happens. We come by it honestly. The truth is this: we are genetically engineered toward messes. Talked about parenting. Our parents were messes. They were in rebellion of their parents, and their parents were messes in rebellion of their parents and trying to change the status quo. And so we've been raised by messes. And the truth is this: your children's parents are a mess as well. Some of you are saying, wait a second. For a moment, you're like, yeah, my kids are. No, not me. But here's the good news that you can take away from this. There's always someone whose life is a bigger mess than yours. We shouldn't celebrate that. While that may be true, that's not the good news. It's not good news at all. The good news is this mess that we all deal with. The mess that's in our lives that we all deal with is actually our common ground. No matter what we come from, no matter what we're dealing with in our life, how spiritual we are, how unspiritual we are, how much money we have, how much money we don't have, no matter what side of the tracks we live on, the mess is our common ground. If it's your first day here or you were part of the planning team of this church, this is our common ground. And so the good news is it's not just you. That should be something that we celebrate and revel in. Good. I'm not the only one. I'm surrounded by messes. And that's the truth. We are. It's why we should be careful when we're tempted to criticize people in their mess. Because that's the easy thing to do. We can look at people's lives often, and we're so good at recognizing a mess in someone else's life. I mean, if I just for a moment, if I was to ask somebody, hey, could someone in here just stand up and describe someone else that has a messy life in this room? Oh man, there would be people popping up like, oh yeah, let me tell you what I saw about this one on Facebook, okay? So we would be so quick, and it'd be so easy for us to look at other people's parenting, other people's spending habits, other people's relationships, and just look at that and be able to point out and pick apart the messiness in other people's lives. But we should be careful when we're tempted to criticize. The people in front of you and the people behind you are navigating some things in their life, some messes that you don't know about. And isn't it funny how when we understand what people are going through, we look at their messes differently? When we understand what people have been through, maybe how they were raised, maybe what they're going through at home, maybe what they're dealing with, maybe it's their health, maybe when we understand those things, all of a sudden we look at their mess differently. Would you agree with that? There's something about walking a mile in someone's shoes or walking with them that makes you empathetic, that makes you defensive, that makes you encouraged. It changes the way you see somebody. And so because of this mess is our common ground. And you can't really understand why they do what they do and say what they say until you know the messes that they're in. So if we can look around the room, now you look down the row and you look down the row, the left, the right, you look down you see, okay, people are in messes. We shouldn't criticize. I got it, Shane. All right, let's go on. It's why we should do this. We should be willing to look in the mirror before we judge. We need to be students before we're critics. We should be students before we are critics. Our messes seep through our attitudes, seep through our words, seep through our responses and how we treat one another. What you have been through affects how you act. And so the thing that we should be willing to do today, that we should be willing to do when we look at other people and the messes that they're dealing with, the Bible is very clear about this. We should look in the mirror and we should be very apt to do this. Yank the plank. Yank the plank. We should first remove the plank from our eye before we acknowledge and try to remove the speck from our brother's eye. Matthew 7:5 reveals this truth to us. And this is exactly why we need one another. This is exactly why we need one another, because very few people have really gotten out of a mess without the help of someone else. And if we're honest about that for just a moment, whenever I'm dealing with let's just put this in practical terms for just a second. Have you ever gotten something really in your eye? And so when you get something into your eye, maybe it's a splinter, a piece of wood, it's some sawdust, it's a gnat, it's a bug, just whatever. We are so quick because our vision is affected, and we want that back immediately. We want to deal with that, and we want to rectify and correct that immediately. So what do? Immediately, if someone is around, we'll go up to them, we'll be like, hey, what's in my eye? And we'll look to the left, look up, look down, and tears are coming down our face. We look like an idiot. But we're willing to immediately go up to someone and say, what's in my eye? What is causing the irritation? What is causing this vision? What is causing this? And we're willing to go up to someone and help us in that facet. Very rarely does someone get out of a mess by themselves. And if there was just one thing that as Christian, as the Christian community, as the follower of Christ, on a whole, if we could get this right, this one thing, I'm not talking about how much money you give, I'm not talking about how much you serve, but if we would get this one thing right, acknowledging the plank in our eye before we criticize someone else for the one in theirs, you know how different the world would be? And I think that a lot of us, we're afraid to go to church initially. We're afraid to walk in because we're afraid that people will truly see the mess that we are. And we think for some reason that we walk into this room full of people that can't relate. And that's not even the truth. It's such a miscast together is the mess that's commonly believed that the mess that brings us together is the mess that brought God near. And we'll explain this. So we talked about this mess that is our common ground. Well, it's this mess that we're dealing with that brought God near. God looked down and he saw the mess that we were in and saw that we could do nothing about it, could do nothing to get out of it. And so in response, he sent his son because of the mess that we all commonly share. We all have this mess that we walk around with that we can do nothing about. And the culture that Jesus came to was not ready for what Jesus came and did. The culture that he responded to had no graphical reason, no reason logically to believe that someone like Jesus would appear. Because what Jesus came down and did was exactly the opposite of what they expected. They expected judgment. They expected if you were in the view of God, if you were in the thumb of God, under his thumb, that it was about judgment. And that he would be laying the law down, that that's what they would experience. But exactly the opposite. There was no existing narrative of hope that fit what actually happened. When Jesus stepped onto the pages of history, only one guy recognized him, and it was John the Baptist, and he was kind of an odd guy. I just picture like a guy in his buffalo briefs walking around with like locusts and, dipping it in some Nutella. That's what I'm picturing. Tim McGraw, like Indian Outlaw. This is what I picture. Listen, so you got John the Baptist, and he's the only one, the weirdo, recognizes Jesus. And when Jesus came on the scene, nobody was expecting a graceful God, a God of grace, because there was nothing that they could relate to that would tell them that grace was available. So they were expecting and hoping for Judge Judy to show up. Don't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining, like something like that. They're expecting that. But what they got was exactly the opposite. And while they sat in the jury box and they shook their heads, they expected lightning bolts and punishment, Jesus introduced this foreign word called grace. So Jesus comes in and he lays down this grace bomb. And God reveals, recognizing the mess right here, that through recognizing this mess, we are only a baby step away from acknowledging God. And this is how we do that. The mess, this mess that we're talking about of your life and the world, is a lens. And if you look through a lens, some of you wear glasses, you look through a lens because it will correct your vision, or it will make it clear, or it will enlarge. It'll allow you to see things in a better perspective. So if you can recognize a mess when you see one, if we can look at something through this lens and recognize a mess when we see one, you can see God. Because to recognize one is to acknowledge the other. So if this mess of our life that we deal with is a lens through which we can discover God, we can see that God reveals himself, that God reveals his presence. He reveals the reality of who God is, and he reveals the concept of God within the concept of a mess. And he does this through a Pharisee. And this is really neat how he does this. This entire thing happened so quickly, it took a Pharisee to sort out all of the facts. So God uses a Pharisee on the scene. The Apostle Paul steps onto the pages of history as a good Jewish boy. And he sees what's happening with this Jesus. And he sees this Nazareth hippie show up on the scene. And when he looks at him, he sees that he is distorting the law that he has ascribed to, this law of Judaism. And he sees this Christianity as a knockoff of Judaism. And he doesn't like it. And so he takes it upon his shoulders himself to do something about it and to abolish Christianity. He is single-handedly putting himself in charge of taking out the church. And that is what Paul comes to do. Starts as this Pharisee. So Paul shuts down the local church. And then God gets his attention. God gets his attention. All of a sudden, there's a radical transformation that takes place within Paul. And he goes from shutting down the church to planting. He becomes the #1 planter of churches. And he plants churches all around the Mediterranean Sea, the border of it. And then after he plants these churches, he goes on and he encourages these churches by writing them letters. Telling them, this is where you're missing the mark. This is where you're getting it right. This is how you can improve. He's discipling them. He's leading them how to be followers of Christ. How to be fruitful, how to multiply, how to do that. And so he comes from #1 gunner to #1 planner, and now we have Paul, who, it's this man that introduces the idea that our messes, our inability to keep God's law are the portal or the window from time to time that which we get to see God or this presence of God. And so if you have your Bible, open up to the book of Romans 3:19. So take that for just a second. Open up to the book of Romans 3:19. And we're going to start there, and we see right here Paul talking. Now we know that whatever the law says, it says to those who are under the law. So what is happening in this first sentence here is he says that there's a law that exists, and those who are under that, that law is over, are under that law. So there are people that ascribe to, that put themselves under this law. And for us today, that would be us. If we're Christians, we are under the law of God. If you, in modern day, if you attend a Christian university, there is a governing body of laws, a list of laws that you have agreed to live by while attending that university. But just because you have to live by those laws while you go to that university doesn't mean that I have to. You have chosen to live under those laws. And as we travel the country, or the world, and we go into other countries, we choose by visiting other countries that we live under their law. We don't get to just say, oh, you know what? In America, we can do that. So because I'm from America, I get to do that here. It doesn't work that way. Turn that cat around, and when someone comes over here and they offend the laws of our country, they don't get to go, oh, well, I'm from blah, 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 and it's legal in our country to do that. No. Well, that's good, but you're in America. So you are under the law of this land. And so there's this law that exists here. And Romans 3:19 is talking about that. Now we know that whatever the law says, it says to those who are under the law. So it's saying it's only applicable to those under that law, those in that country, those in that university, those who ascribe to it. Everybody with me so far? Okay, so it says to those who are under the law. He's speaking of the law of God. If you're a Jew, the law of God is the Old Testament. If you're a Christian, the law of God is how you treat others as Jesus has treated you. And to make it broader, if you're not religious, if you're not a follower of any deist, in this it would be your conscience. There's a law, there's a morality that we ascribe to that across the board we can agree on is considered moral. And so there's a consciousness that enters the picture. And we believe that there's a universal law written on the hearts of all people. There are some oughts that exist, and you experience these as, well, everybody or every person should try to or shouldn't do this. And so there's these things that we just agree to. You shouldn't drive into a lake and leave the doors shut. Something is going to happen. It's an ought. Why is it there? Well, there's physics that comes into play, and there's that, but it's just there. You know, you shouldn't walk up to someone and just slap them in public because you don't like how they act. There's consequences for it. So there's naturally an ought to that you shouldn't do. Now there's no, maybe there is a law that says that. There probably is, but you're getting where I'm going. Maybe there is a law. I shouldn't just strike you. There's consequences, but you're getting where I'm going with it. So if it's over you, you are under it. Then when we are wrong, religious or not, the strangest things happen. When we are wrong, religious or not, we respond. And often that response is this. We look that we have missed the mark, we have fallen short of something, and we go, well, guess what? I'm not perfect. And when we miss the mark, we realize that we're not perfect. When we do something wrong, we realize and we confess it, and we realize that we have missed it, and we say, nobody's perfect. And when we say that, you're acknowledging that there is a perfect out there that exists that everybody isn't. So disregarding what you believe or where you're from or who your mom and your daddy is, we can say that. There is a perfect out there that nobody is. It exists. Somewhere, something is perfect, and we realize we are not it. There is a perfect that nobody is. You have some theory or explanation about what that perfect is, and you fall short of it. Christians do this. We fall short of God. That is the perfect that we ascribe to. That's the perfect that exists that we realize that we fall short of. And we're going to talk about that right here. And continuing on, verse 19. Now we know that whatever the law says, it says it to those who are under the law. So that, and this is the point of it all, every mouth may be silenced and the whole world accountable to God. So if we look at that, it means this, that none of us is perfect. None of us keeps God's law, karma's law, our own laws. We all fall short. Christians, we believe that we are accountable to God when we fall short because He is behind the law that 3:19 talks about. We believe that we fall short of that. We are less than perfect. We have missed the mark. And now, because of this, you are accountable. We are accountable to whoever sets the standard that you accept or adopt. It's not as if if it's not God, then it's whoever determines what perfect is. But for us, it's God. And Paul goes on to say here in just a little bit more, therefore, in verse 20, no one will be declared righteous in God's sight by the works of the law. So what this tells us is that we all fall short. None of us are perfect. We realize that because our life is a mess. Our life is a mess. It may be a hot mess. It may be a perfect mess. But our life is a mess. And none of us can be declared righteous in God's sight by the works of the law because no one is good enough. And it goes on to say, rather, though, the law we become conscious of our sin. Through this, we realize the conscious of our sin. So no one will be declared righteous in God's sight by the works of the law. So there's nothing that we can do. There's no works, and that's what I think a lot of us, we get caught doing. We get caught trying to be better people. If I could just do things better. If I could just be better. And in the pursuit of trying to be better, we create more messes. When really, that's not what it's about at all. Rather, through the law, we become conscious of our sin. Because the law doesn't and cannot make us better. All it can do is remind us that we're a mess. So if you're to put that out there, the law says you cannot kill people. The fact that you don't kill people doesn't make you a better person. And so for us, if we look at the fact that we cannot keep the law, we realize we're not perfect. We knew better. And so often we catch ourselves getting caught up in this mess. We catch ourselves being caught up in this mess. And rather, through the law, we become conscious of our sin. and we have this point where we know better and we do it anyway. We know better. We know the sin that we deal with, and we do it anyway. We get caught up. We know the law. If you've been to church a few times, even if you don't come to church, you know it's a sin to lie, but there's still times that we lie. We know better, but we do it. We're still jealous. We know better, but we do it. We still covet. We know better, but we do it. Maybe you lust. You know better, but you do it. You knew better, and you did it anyway. You carry the law around in your minds, but just having the law doesn't make you better. It makes us accountable. It makes us accountable to something. And if we ascribe to this law, it's that accountability. It's that recognition. The law of God says, love your neighbor and put others first. It says there's a verb. The word love is a verb, to love them. And it says to do it because we don't do it often enough. It says to love your neighbor, to go about loving your neighbor as you already are doing, loving yourself. The Bible's very clear that we're already loving ourselves. We're good at self-seeking. We're good at doing that. Now, it reminds us, the law says that the greatest of all commands is to love your neighbor as yourself. And it's when we miss that mark and we realize that we fall short, that we don't always love our neighbor. We don't always put others first. The law reminds me that I fall short. Your internal law, the rules that make you conscious of the fact that you fall short of whatever you put those laws in your head to begin with, it reminds us that we've missed the mark. And because of this, we see we are a mess. So it's like, okay, great, Shane. I get it. I'm a mess. Thank you. And I think for this reason, a lot of us, we find ourselves uncomfortable in church at times. Because we're reminded by the law that we carry with us that we fall short. And because we fall short, we have to make a choice, a response of what we will do. How do we rectify that? How do we do something about it? You're a mess, but you wouldn't know you were a mess if you didn't have a non-mess standard in which to compare it to. And that's where we see that we are one baby step away from when we recognize a mess, we recognize God through our mess. And that's how God chose to reveal himself to us, through our mess. So the verses later, just 3 verses later, what mess today are you reminded of? What mess are you reminded of in this verse? For we have all sinned. For we all have messes. And we all fall short. We've missed the mark of the glory of God, perfection. For we all have messes and have missed the mark of perfection. I'm not trying to rewrite the Bible. This is perfect in the way that it is. But I'm just pointing out for us, we're messy. We have all sinned. We all have a mess that we deal with in our life. For all, everyone, including the man on the stage. Yes, I fall short of my standards all the time. And I know I fall short of God's and everyone else's as well. So now, what do? There's this thing called awareness. When we have awareness of our messes, it awakens us to something outside of us, which holds us accountable. Accountability enters the scene. And I'm not talking about just meeting with others to have an accountability partner, but being accountable to the law of which we ascribe to. We respond by trying harder, and that's not what God's after. God's not sitting up there pressing on us and saying, you know what, if you would just try a little bit harder, I could love you a little more. I could reveal myself. I could do more things in your life if you would just try a little harder. It's often what we do as parents. You know what? Your life would be so much better if you just put in some effort. If you would just try a little bit more. If you would just apply yourself a little bit more. But exactly what's being said here, what God's after is that we would recognize and be aware. That we would recognize and be aware. Because I think the danger that a lot of us deal with is that we don't recognize the mess that we have in our life. we're so good at not paying attention to our mess, acknowledging the mess in the mirror, and then God gets a bad name. The church gets a bad name because we're so good, or at least people feel that we are so good at pointing out the messiness in others' lives. And so if we could just get this right, if we could look in the mirror, as Matthew says, and yank the plank, remove the plank from our own eye before we acknowledge the speck in our brothers. C.S. Lewis does such a good job of explaining some things to us to really rationalize this. He talks about, in Mere Christianity, C.S. Lewis says that when two people argue, he says when they quarrel, we appeal to a standard of behavior that we expect the other person to know about. You ever gotten into an argument with a stranger on the street? Not me, not just a few weeks ago that I talked about on the stage in church. But it's exactly what I did. I talked about this van situation crossing over, and I was so mad at this van because I was like, how can you be such an idiot to pull out when there is a car here with children in the car? And I'm expecting him to live by this moral standard that I'm ascribed to in this very moment because I understand the consequences. Because I saw the children in the car and I saw the car sitting in the intersection that he didn't see. And so immediately I'm caught up in the judgment of this man, this woman driving the car. You are an idiot. That's what we do when we argue. We expect each other to understand each other's compasses, to ascribe to the law. I don't know everything that offends Jeff in his life, and he doesn't know everything that offends me. And if we're complete strangers, it's funny, my daughter last night, without being prompted, she just says this to me. We're eating dinner last night, and she goes, Dad, what are your pet peeves? Because she doesn't know. I don't know your pet peeves, the law, the consciousness that you have ascribed to in your life that drive you crazy. Maybe it drives you crazy when people chew with their mouth open, and because they chew with their mouth open, you hold judgment against them, and they're a complete moron to you, and you can't eat with them. And so we're like, if you would try a little harder, maybe I could be around you. Do you think there's some things in our lives that are a pet peeve to God? Maybe if you wouldn't be a jerk to your brothers and sisters, same thing I'd say to my children, you'd be a little easier to be around. It's not what he says. But it was just funny how this is what we do. And we accept the law of gravity. The law of gravity, C.S. Lewis, tells us that stones will drop if you drop them. They will fall. If I have a stone in my hand and I drop it, the law of gravity is predictable. The stone will fall. It won't go up. It will fall. And we trust the law of this so much. Pilots trust that lift exists, and they will fly repeatedly. And they will put other people's lives on that plane with them because they trust physics. The law says that when air travels faster over the top of a wing than it does under a wing, it will rise. We trust that law because it's predictable. It is predictable. But the law of human nature tells you what human beings ought to do and do not do. It's unpredictable. This is C.S. Lewis talking. I wish I was this brilliant person, but I'm not. And human beings all over the earth have this curious idea that they ought to behave in a certain way and cannot really get rid of it. And this thought right here drove C.S. Lewis to become a believer, a theist. There is something above and beyond the ordinary facts of men's behavior, and yet quite definitely real, a real law which none of us made, but which we find pressing on us. C.S. Lewis says that we've experienced this. We have all felt the pressure of conscience. We've all felt this pressure of conscience and the pressure of ought. And Paul says that this is the gracious presence of God. So when we see our messes as messes, maybe not a good thing. There's a reason we say, I'm missing the mark. Or maybe we look at other people's lives and we look at whatever, we compare it to God, and we realize that there's a mess there. And maybe a mess that shouldn't be there. And because of that mess, there's a pressure, there's a conscience. And so God says, that's what I'm looking for. That you would recognize my presence in your mess. That in the midst of your mess, you don't look and say, how can I just make it better? How can I find the remedy? What is the remedy? But that you would recognize the presence of God in your mess. And the pressure we feel that is universal in every culture is not God pressing us that we be better people. It's God pressing us that we would recognize God and that our mouths would be silenced in response to others. And we would recognize the mess in the mirror that we can do something about through his presence. That we would pay attention to that we would do something there. And there is the day, right there. Once we acknowledge our messes, we are a baby step away from acknowledging God. And so we can say today, I've made a mess of my finances. I've made a mess of my relationships. I've made a mess of my life. But because of this, I have a God that wants me to recognize his presence through my mess. Through my mess. And so if anything, we should feel better about walking into church next week and sitting by people maybe we don't normally sit by, because we've concluded today that we're all a mess. And there's no reason that anyone can't walk in here with the mess that they're dealing with. Yeah, maybe some messes are a little messier than others, but they're a mess nonetheless. And so the moral of the story is we all have something in common. And that one thing that we have in common with this person or this group sitting next to us is our mess. And through this, we're related, and this factor remains constant. We all fall short. You're a mess. And I know a mess when I see one, because I'm a mess. Let's pray.